everybody. Welcome to an edition of ATL Prime Sports. Todd Corder here in Atlanta. JJ on the other side of the ATL. Wayne, our producer in Memphis, and our guest is Dave Cohen at the Georgia State Panthers. Voice of the Panthers in football, basketball, and baseball. Before we get into that, we'll go ahead and take a little care of business here. You can reach all of us on ATL Prime Sports, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. You can get a hold of JJ at JJGetYouOne, Wayne at RWY Jr., myself at Corder Todd, and you can get a hold of our guest, Dave Cohen, at GA State Voice. I hope that got that correct. That's what I last remember anyway. And we're going to discuss the Panthers' opening win against Charlotte. And then we're going to do a little bit of National Football League. We're also going to do a little bit of college football. We're going to play a game called Overreaction, and not an overreaction. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about the Atlanta Braves, and then we'll have our Pick Six at the end of the show. Guys, let's go ahead and get started. Before I do that, JJ, I wanted to wish your lovely wife, Angela, a happy birthday. And I'm sure she has Jordan right now, so you're able to do the show, my friend.
That is correct. So happy birthday to my wife, Angela. We love you, and let's kick this thing off.
Love you too, Angela. So anyway, let's go ahead and talk. Dave, let's talk the Georgia State Panthers, their first win of the season against Charlotte. A successful game, 20-9. The defense only gave up 7 points. That was impressive. And the running game was equally impressive, getting 284 yards on the ground. Well, they only threw 12 passes, as Woody Hayes would say. When you throw the ball, there's 3 things that can happen, and 2 of them are not good. Well, Georgia State had 2 good things with Granger, quarterback. He threw 2 interceptions, and they had 1 bad thing, an interception. But defensively, Dave, they really stood out. They did hold Charlotte to 158 yards passing and just a little bit over 100 on the ground. But more importantly, they only allowed 3 yards a carry. And that's a good sign for this Georgia State team because they've got Auburn coming up. So if you can run the ball and stop the run, your chances of winning a football game increase tenfold. Your thoughts?
Well, when we did this show last week, I don't think I called it a must-win. But when you look at the first 5 games in our schedule, including the first 4 non-conference games, this was in my opinion, must-win. Army turned out to be a 43-10 loss. They just ran over us, under us, around us, in every which way they could, and we couldn't stop them. And that made for an interesting week of practice, getting ready to go to Chapel Hill. And we talked last week about Georgia State giving up 59 points on the road to North Carolina. On the other hand, Charlotte, to me anyway, was a little bit of an unknown. They were 2-0. They had a nice win over Duke, and they had a nice win over Gardner-Webb. So what kind of a game would they bring to Atlanta for them in week 3 to face Georgia State? I was a little worried about it, simply because I didn't know, again, what the Charlotte 49ers were going to look like by the time they got to Atlanta. And you're right, Georgia State really rose to the occasion. Coach Elliott, during his Monday Zoom press conference after North Carolina, referenced that competition continues at all positions and that there might be some alterations amongst the guys that were starting. And of course, right from the top, we saw that as the week went on, word got out that Darren Granger, the transfer from Furman, was going to get his first start as a Georgia State Panther. Interestingly enough, as I talked to him earlier today on one of our Georgia State football practice reports, and he didn't need me to remind him, that Charlotte start was his second start as a quarterback in Center Park Credit Union Stadium, because in 2019, week 2, he started for Furman against Georgia State the week after we came back from beating Tennessee in Knoxville. So, it was a great opportunity for him. Cornelius Brown, who was, for all intents and purposes, fantastic for us last year for the most part as an extremely young quarterback. was really tasked this year with two very difficult opponents in week 1 and 2. Again, we talked about the fact that in the Army game, we only had the ball on offense for 18 minutes. They had it for a little over 42. And then look, North Carolina is North Carolina. There's a reason why they were ranked preseason number 10. And after losing to Virginia Tech, they were number 24 by the time we got to Chapel Hill. But that's a pretty good football team. And offensively, we were not really able to get a whole lot going. Granger did come into the North Carolina game late. By that time, North Carolina's starters were off the field, and, he was able to move Georgia State up and down the field a little bit better than Cornelius was. But Cornelius was facing the number 1 and the number 2 guys on defense for North Carolina. So fast forward, again, Coach Elliott mentioned there might be some changes at certain positions. Along with Darren Granger at quarterback, we saw Tucker Gregg supplant Destin Coates as the starting running back. And Destin ran the ball really well against Charlotte. I think in the last 2 games, Charlotte and North Carolina, Georgia State has gone for it on 4th down 5 times, and Tucker has converted on all 5 of those opportunities, 3 times against Charlotte on Saturday night. And then with our wide receiver situation being what it is, and that Cornelius McCoy has been bothered by an injury, and Sam Pinckney has been bothered by a nagging injury. A couple of guys stepped up, Jamari Thrash and Jakias Cradle. Cradle, a transfer from the University of Central Florida, and they both played what I would term extremely well. Jamari actually leads all Georgia State relievers with 11 receptions and 1 touchdown, and Cradle, has 5 catches so far on the 1 touchdown. So guys stepped up when they were asked to step up. As they always say, you guys know this, next man up. No matter what reason, whether it's injury, whether it's competition in practice, and the guys that I mentioned really stepped up. And Georgia State, again, defensively, all starting with those 2 inside linebackers, Blake Carroll and Jordan Venzial. They both had 9 tackles apiece in the Charlotte game. And you read the numbers. We held them, I think, total to, I think it was 267 yards total combined running and passing. So overall, great night for the Georgia State defensive unit. There was obviously other guys that made some, great plays as well. But I'll tell you, Georgia State needed that ball game in the worst way, as you mentioned, with Auburn coming up Saturday afternoon and then opening up conference play in a couple weeks against Appalachian State.
Yeah, you're listening to Dave Cohen right here on ATL Prime Sports. Dave, was listening to your call, and Granger led one of the most impressive drives in the early part of this season, the 2-play drive that I think tied it up early or late second quarter there. Did he do enough to win the job? And talk about that drive. We've mentioned Thrash's name on here a bunch of times. That was a 35-yard touchdown catch. Again, 2-parter. Did Granger do enough to win the job, play again against Auburn and going forward? And why don't they throw the ball a little bit more? It looked like it worked a little bit in the first half.
Yeah, I think that, and again, I cannot speak for Coach Elliott, but I think they were just looking for an opportunity to try something new. Cornelius, again, nothing against Cornelius Brown. He had a great season for us last year and had a fantastic fall and spring and fall practice. But again, he started against 2 pretty good teams. I mean, Army is 3-0. They're scoring a lot of points. North Carolina bounced back from us. If you noticed, by the way, after losing to Virginia Tech, they scored 59 points against us. Did you see how many points they scored against Virginia?
I didn't catch it, but I know it was pretty high number, wasn't it? Or
59.
Yeah.
So they did to Virginia, an ACC opponent, exactly what they had done to us, a week ago. So I think Granger will get the start against Auburn. But I don't think by any means that we have seen the last of Cornelius Brown. I'm not saying it will settle into a 2-quarterback system. As of right now, I think you just go with the guy that is able to move the offense. And three games in, you've got a 3-game sample if you're the coaching staff. And so right now you're going to go with Darren Granger. But, me personally, I'm not ready to say anybody, that either one of the 2 or even Michele Colacerto, who has not gotten into a game yet, is definitely going to settle in and is going to be penned in as the starter. Right now, I think they're still working with a pencil, and they're still going to be in a situation where if a change needs to be made, for the better, then they will make it. But yeah, the two guys that I mentioned, Jamari Thrash and Ja'Kias Cradle. Actually, on Moore, there was 2 drives. I think that drive, if I remember correctly, was 2 plays, 68 yards, if I remember correctly, and then we're in the end zone. But yeah, those guys came up with some big catches. Thrash, Cradle, Terrence Dixon. Again, and they're doing it without the 2 receivers that we really thought were going to be the 2 go-to guys, our Batman and Robin, Sam Pinckney, all preseason Sun Belt, and Cornelius McCoy, all preseason Sun Belt. I forget, one was first, one was second or third team, but those were the 2 guys everybody was talking about. They weren't talking about necessarily Jamari Thrash or Ja'Kias Cradle, because Cradle, again, comes in from UCF. Nobody was quite sure what to expect. Again, go back to Army, didn't have an opportunity to do a whole lot because you weren't on the field offensively a whole lot. You give up 59. There were a lot of 3-and-outs at North Carolina. North Carolina, as you might imagine, is a preseason top 10. Bigger, faster, stronger, skilled. That's why they were a preseason top 10 team. So they never really allowed Georgia State to get into any sort of a rhythm with regard to the offense. But now, Auburn's going to be another tough, that's going to be another tough ball game, obviously. Going into Auburn. I mean, if you look at Auburn's 3 games, they're 2-1. They did lose to Penn State this past week. Prior to that, they scored 60 against Akron and 62 against Alabama State. Is Georgia State Akron or Alabama State? No. But in the eyes of Auburn, in the eyes of all the Auburn fans, for all intents and purposes, we are. They just group us in with those 2 schools, even though they have no idea what to expect. So,
well, you know what, Dave? It's not only when you play, or not who you play, but when you play them. With Auburn, in this case, they lost a really tough game up in Happy Valley. So they may come out flat, and it might be an opportunity for Georgia State. Should be really pumped up to play an opponent like Auburn on their field, like they were against Tennessee a few years ago. Maybe they can jump them early. Maybe Auburn will turn the football over, and who knows what will happen after that. We've seen some big upsets in college football this year with Jacksonville State beating Florida State. We've seen Montana beat Washington years ago. App State beat Michigan. You just never know. And when, JJ asked a question about throwing the ball, look, Georgia State has been a running team, this year. They've rushed the ball 4 times more than they've thrown with it. So they've stuck with a script. You got 4 players with over 100 yards rushing. And one of them is Granger, who had 50 last week on 17 carries. So, you know what? Keeping the ball on the ground, not turning it over, churning the clock, moving the sticks. If they can do this against a great defensive line of Auburn, it would be quite some feat. And B, if you can run the ball on them, maybe you can loosen them up with a deep pass. I know this is a lot of ifs, and they're a big underdog, but this is why they play the game.
Well, and again, just remember, deja vu all over again. When we went into Chapel Hill, they were trying to bounce back from what was a disappointing loss in their opener at Virginia Tech. So I feel like we've seen this script before, now going into Auburn after they lose, as you mentioned, to Penn State. So, yeah, everything you said, if it comes to fruition, will be great news for Georgia State. But again, you're still going up against a very, very talented Auburn football team. And they're not going to be one to take Georgia State lightly. Not that they would anyway. And nothing we do will be a surprise. It's one of those things. You can have the greatest game plan on paper that college football has ever seen. You got to be able to execute. You're right. You got to, at the end of the day, the difference in size and skill and speed across the lines, and that's one thing that Coach Elliott said. Even coming out of North Carolina, he was pleased with the play of the offensive and defensive line. it's another tall ask, tall order, for our offensive line and our defensive guys, both starters and two deeps, to go toe for toe against what Auburn's going to throw out there. And I've been working on my sheets. I don't think there's an Auburn offensive or defensive lineman that's, on the offensive line, nobody's under 300 pounds. They're all big, 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". These are guys who, have serious thoughts of playing at the next level on Sundays, when their career at Auburn is over. So they are built to compete in the they are recruited, and then they are built to compete and win in the Southeastern Conference. Georgia State recruits and builds to compete in the Sun Belt Conference. Could we have another afternoon like Tennessee? Maybe, but Auburn is not Tennessee. Tennessee was struggling when we went in there, and we also caught them in week 1. Auburn has played 3 games. As you mentioned, they're just back from Penn State. It's going to be a little bit different to be able to catch Auburn on, at home week 4 coming out of the Sun Belt.
Well, hey, Dave, there's something else that's kind of a deja vu all over again. Is a few years ago, LSU thought that they would throw their homecoming party by inviting Troy in and, thinking, hey, we'll have an easy win against Troy. It's our homecoming. And apparently Auburn is doing the same thing, making this their homecoming. So, I mean, I would mention that to the coach if you get any kind of direct line to him to pump those players up. Say, hey, an SEC team is trying to do this to us again. So get in there and, do what you can, and I'm an Auburn fan and I would rather see Auburn win, but it's kind of weird having, your homecoming this early because you think you got against a team that you can easily beat. And I don't really like that.
Well, it's a guarantee game. You see it across the country at this time of the year, those first 4 or 5 weeks. We've talked about it before, guys. It's if you go back to President Ronald Reagan and his term trickle-down economics, with the television money that we're talking about in college athletics right now, specifically college football, it's the only way that the millions of dollars that the SEC earns in their television deal ever trickles down to schools in the Sun Belt or Conference USA or out west, the Mountain West, if they're playing, a Pac-12 opponent, somebody that has a large television deal. Of course, none of them are as large as the SEC, but this is the only way that money ever gets down into the group of 5. You have to go on the road and you have to play games like this. Bob Reinhardt, our head basketball coach at Georgia State, back in my early days, used to have a kind of a funny remark when it came to college basketball, because back in the day, Georgia State was a struggling program, to put it mildly, and it was not uncommon for Georgia State to be the team that a Power 5 would schedule to be their homecoming opponent. And Coach Reinhardt would say more often than not, whether it was in the newspaper or on the radio or on the TV, we don't mind being the homecoming opponent for the right amount of money. We'll come be your homecoming opponent, and I'll even bring the homecoming queen. So let's play.
Yeah. Well,
Dave, right here on ATL Prime Sports. Dave, I'll ask every week. We want our listeners to be able to tune in and follow the Panthers. How do they catch the 4:00 showdown in the Plains?
Our radio flagship in Atlanta is 88.5 FM WRAS, nice 50,000 watt FM station. That station will air it on tape delay this Saturday at 7 p.m. We'll be live on the Georgia State Athletics mobile app, live on our Gainesville radio affiliate, WGTJ, and, of course, live on the TuneIn radio app. And if you go on that TuneIn radio app, which is really a cool app, you can pretty much listen to any athletic event at any level, college, professional, domestic, European, worldwide. If you go to TuneIn Radio, the app, it's a free app you can download to your device, and you would search WRAS, and you can hear us there. So really a multitude of ways to tune in, and I'm just hoping that Georgia State goes out and, like you guys said, gets off to a good start. Don't get down, don't dig a hole, and don't find yourself in a hole early. Let Auburn know that we're there to play above and beyond just collecting a check, and try to take some momentum into week 5, which is when it really, really starts, when Appalachian State comes a call into Atlanta at Center Park Stadium. I see it.
You know what? We'll find out, Dave. That's the deal. I'm sure that that this opponent has Georgia State's attention and then some. And then right after that, they play Appalachian State to start conference play. What a brutal way to have to start such a promising season. But then again, if they happen to pull this off, and that is a huge if, and like you said, it would be bigger than Tennessee. It would be bigger than North Carolina. This would be gigantic for the program. And if they even keep it close, you'll have a lot of national attention on the program, taking a school like Auburn down in the end or possibly upset them. Dave, thanks so much for coming on. We'll talk to you about the Auburn game this time next week.
All right, you guys have a good rest of the show, and appreciate you having me on. And, yeah, we'll talk to you next week.
All right, take care. Dave Cohen, the voice of the Georgia State Panthers, here with us every week on ATL Prime Sports. Todd Corder here in Atlanta, JJ on the other side of the ATL, Wayne, our producer in Memphis, Tennessee. Let's stick with some college football, guys. I got a lot of attention on Twitter this week. Yes, with my TC Top 10 on Twitter. You can go check that out and respond if you want at Corder Todd. Some people thought I had massive quantities of alcohol when I chose that Michigan State could be a top 10 team right now. So we'll play overreaction or not a reaction, and I'll let you guys verbally comment on that first, and then I'll go. I'd like you to start us off, Wayne.
I'd say that was not an overreaction, and I like to see you putting those lists up there, not just based on statistics or history, and doing things with your heart more or less, because that's the way I pick all my stuff.
Well, based upon our records this year and the pick six, we sure are using our brain. We're all below 500. I'm hoping we all can turn it around starting this week. I try to use my head when I pick this stuff up, but I could be accused of using my heart. JJ, how about you?
Oh, boy. You know me. We've talked about it off air. I'm not far behind on them. I'm not far behind, but I do think them in the top 10 is an overreaction. Here's why. Look, I don't know how good of a football team Miami is. They're going to have to rebound. I think when it's all said and done, that Michigan State win over Miami will look pretty good. But right now, they only have wins against Northwestern and Miami. And look, some of these, the App State win against Miami too. So, again, we'll see. We'll revisit this Miami win. I don't think they're far off. I really don't. And I like the way TC does his top 10 because, again, it's not chalk. It's not your same old, same old. It's a different perspective. And look, Michigan State's 3-0 for the first time since 2015. They have 2 road wins, again, versus Power 5 teams. Look, we'll know what Michigan State is the last 5 weeks of their schedule, folks. It's Michigan, at Purdue, Maryland, who's looking pretty good with Tua's brother, and at Ohio State versus Penn State the last 2 weeks. We'll find out how good of a school Michigan State is, how good of a squad they are the last 5 weeks of the season. That's an overreaction. They're not a top 10 team.
Well, I mean, look, you made good points. I just simply went by the eye test. I look at the quarterback play at Michigan State, which to me, a lot of folks didn't really see this coming when talking about the Spartans. But they don't turn the football over. They have 1 turnover, does Michigan State, in 3 games. They have no interceptions. And, everybody's talking about, rightfully so, Young, the kid from Alabama, obviously Coral, the kid from Ole Miss, and et cetera. But this Peyton Thorne doesn't have an interception. He's got 9 touchdown passes. He seems to get rid of the ball. He knows where to go with the ball. And he's got excellent wide receivers in Reed and Naylor. Mm-hmm. I mean, these guys are in double digits in receptions. And then you look at the running back situation for Michigan State, the offensive line. I mean, Kenneth Walker III's almost got 500 bills right now.
Yeah, you're right.
And the
TC's got
defense, JJ, the D-line, front seven is exceptional, and they won that game in the heat and humidity. And for a team in the Big Ten to go down there and play in that, it feels like 100 degrees. That's really tough for them. And punch Miami in the mouth in the fourth quarter. I thought that was impressive. My other sleeper, if I may say, is Ole Miss. I mean, Ole Miss's defense has really turned it around this season. They're not the defense they were a year ago, and honestly, they could be Alabama's biggest threat to an undefeated SEC regular season.
Well, I really think that the two teams that are better than Michigan State would be Arkansas and Ole Miss.
I agree with you. I agree with you there, Wayne. But no, TC, you are correct. There is no wrong answer here. That's what I love about sports. It's all opinions. Mine matters just as much as the folks listening to this. Same with Corder, Todd, and RWY Jr. over there, our Twitter handles, folks. Again, if you like these videos, give us a like, give us a subscribe on YouTube. And Todd, I'm right there with you. You mentioned it. Kenneth Walker III, 5 touchdowns, 493 yards rushing in just 3 weeks of play. They are for real. We'll see how real they are the last 5 weeks of that season. Let's get another over or not overreaction.
You know what? I've got one here, and this one's funny. This really is funny. It's not the one on your list. I just think this is hilarious because the Pac-12 right now is the ACC from a year ago. It's Oregon and everybody else. Should the Pac-12 just stop playing football? I mean, Oregon, everybody thinks it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to run the table. And I definitely think that is an overreaction. I mean, you can get beat any week. Do they have a shot to run it? Obviously so. But, I don't know what you guys think, but I think the Pac-12 is a much better league this year. And, anybody can take down anybody this season. UCLA had a tough loss against Fresno, but they turn around and beat Louisiana State before that. I mean, it's topsy-turvy. I think them and the ACC are cousins.
Well, look, I think it is an overreaction right now on Oregon. They still have a pretty tough schedule. They got to play in the Rose Bowl at UCLA in late October. They got to host the Buffs at home, and the Buffs are always a well-coached team. At Washington, we don't know, again, how good the Huskies are. And then, again, Washington State at Utah late in the season, and they finish with the Apple Cup in Oregon State. So you can throw rivalry. You can throw records right out the window. They open up Pac-12 play with Arizona this weekend. I'm with you, TC. I think it's an overreaction on Oregon. You can't run the table. You got to take care of business one game at a time. Stanford looks like a decent program as well. And, again, we'll see what the Bruins do in the end of October versus these Ducks in the Rose Bowl. It should be a fun game to watch. So
you know what, JJ and Wayne, half of the league's 12 teams already have 2 or more losses. And, Oregon is the only unbeaten team left, and they're the only hope for the college football playoff. And if we can transition over to their cousin, which to me is the ACC right now, everybody says Clemson will win the ACC because there's nobody else up there to challenge them. That definitely is an overreaction. North Carolina had that hiccup on a Friday night at Von Tech on opening night, and they played well since. You mentioned Miami. They're going to win more than they lose. They just had a tough start to the season with a very tough schedule, playing 2 physical teams at Alabama and Michigan State, and then you get sandwiched with App State. And I think Miami will turn it around. But, the shock to me, of course, is its undefeated teams are Wake Forest and Boston College. So this league is wide open. kind of like the Pac-12. I swear they're cousins.
Well, those Demon Deacons running the table in that conference would be something else, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, sure would. JJ, I mean, speaking of, overreaction, everybody's flipping out over Clemson's performance against Georgia Tech. And to think about it, that Georgia Tech almost, had trouble with Kennesaw State.
Well, here's the deal. Georgia Tech, the game was competitive in Atlanta. They pulled away from the in-town rivals, as you want to say, the Kennesaw State Owls. They pulled away. They ended up winning that game by quite a good margin. They played a good defensive game plan against Clemson. The thing that scares anybody about Clemson is that defense. It's still awesome. You have Breezy, Scalisi, or I can't remember the linebacker's name, but you have Breezy. You have all these great defensive linemen that can get after the quarterback. I think the offense will come around. We saw what DJU could do last year. So I don't think it's an overreaction. I think Clemson will still honestly probably finish the ACC as the ACC champions, but it's not going to be as easy as everybody expected because North Carolina's good. Todd mentioned Miami. They obviously have Georgia Tech, who we don't know what they're going to do, but their defensive unit gave a great effort against a top team in the nation and former national champion. So maybe Georgia Tech turns the corner and maybe they knock off some people and make themselves look a little bit better. But look, I'm not going to give it to Clemson just yet. I think it's going to be a little bit tougher, but I do think they will prevail, but it'll be closer than people think.
You know what? Let's finish this up with this. Look, they go from Trevor Lawrence to DJ at quarterback. Everybody thinks that DJ is going to step in and play like he did against Notre Dame a year ago, where he threw for over 4 bills and 4 scores and lit it up. And look, he's got different personnel on offense. No ETN at running back. So every year is different in college football. And you know what? Clemson's struggling this year. And no way are they a lock to run the table the rest of the way. There are just too many potential road bumps in the way. You struggle with Georgia Tech, who struggle with Kennesaw State. And I really hate playing that game. You really do, because these games are week to week, and you've got to show up every week now. So, I just think there's so much football to be played. Injuries are a part of it. A coach getting COVID could be part of it. A player getting COVID could be part of it. There's just so many unknowns right now that, there's going to be a lot of overreactions. Let's just play it out and see what happens. All right, let's go on, guys. I know that we're 30 minutes into the show. We try to stick it around 40, and that's probably what will be tonight. Let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons. My goodness. This stuff just wears me out with the Twitter mob laying on Matt Ryan. They blame the whole damn loss on him, and frankly, I'm tired of it. I just am. If you think that Matt Ryan's the reason the Atlanta Falcons lost on Sunday to Tampa Bay, then you know absolutely zero about football. Zero. Guys were coming through on just not even touched. The offensive line is young. They lost Julio Jones. They're dumping Calvin Ridley. You got it tight. You got a young tight end out of Florida who's a rookie. Matt Ryan is not playing with a full deck here. It's not his fault. Now, he's not the most mobile quarterback in the world, and yes, he threw a couple picks. Yes, they were touchdowns. Yes, he hurried the ball. Yes, one ball got tipped. Look, but Matt Ryan is still a top 10 quarterback in this league, and I've heard people say, well, we need to draft a quarterback. Well, you know what? You can draft one, but he's going to sit for 2 years because Matt Ryan's here because of the contract situation. Going to be tough to trade him, JJ.
Yeah, it'll be tough to trade him, but I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback. We had this discussion off air. If he has everything with him, sure, he's a top 10 quarterback, but he doesn't. He doesn't have an offensive line. You mentioned Calvin Ridley's getting double teamed. Kyle Pitts isn't in the game plan. Hayden Hurst is unseen. I think he has maybe 2 or 3 receptions in 2 weeks. Hardly any targets in the red zone. This team's in array. No, Matt Ryan's not a top 10 quarterback, but it's not Matt Ryan's fault that the Falcons are losing. They have 0 offensive linemen. Jalen Mayfield, the 3rd rounder out of Michigan, said on his Twitter account, "This is the amount of sacks I gave up in my career. Draft me if you don't want your quarterback hit." Well, that's what the Falcons did, and guess what? He's been hit unbelievably a lot in the first 2 weeks of the season. So, no, Matt Ryan's not a top 10 quarterback. He's statistically the 2nd worst quarterback in the NFL right now. He threw 3 second-half picks. Whether you want to admit it or not, that's what happened. 2 of them back to the house. This team doesn't look good. I don't know what the identity of this team is. You had 20 carries. 20 carries for 55 yards. You have a wide receiver, number 84, Cordero Patterson, as your leading rusher. Folks, that's not going to win you football games. Todd, you're correct. It is not Matt Ryan's fault, not in the least bit. But he doesn't have anything to do. He can't do anything. He doesn't release the ball quick anymore. He can't move the pocket outside anymore. The game of football right now is almost, and I hate to say this, it almost seems like it's a little too fast-paced for Matt Ryan unless he has an offensive line like Tampa Bay.
You know what, JJ? Look,
your defensive line.
the quarterback's only as good as his offensive line in most cases, and this is absolutely the case here. I don't care who you stick behind center right now. You're not going to win games. Tom Brady made the playoffs his last year in New England, and he realized that there's sunshine in the South, and I'm heading somewhere who has a good offensive line, that has elite receivers, and a very good defense. And, oh, by the way, I'm not Jameis. I won't throw 30 picks. I can get us to the Super Bowl, and after a 7-5 start, voila, he wins it all. Matt Ryan's the same thing. You put Matt Ryan on Tampa Bay right now, and you switch him with Tom Brady, you're going to get somewhat similar results. So, but that's the way it is. I mean, they can't run the football. You mentioned it, but the defense did get 3 sacks last week. That is a bright spot. But how in the world, JJ, are you going to draft a quarterback? I mean, Matt Ryan, he counts for $26.9 million against the cap in 2021. The number's set to rise for $48.7 million in 22. He has a roster bonus on March 11, 2022 of $7.5 million and a salary of $16.3. The final year of his contract in 2023, $43.6 million, $9.3 million in prorated signing bonus, reducing the prorated amount to $15.6 million. Yet Ryan still has a signing bonus due on March 10th of 2023 of $7.5 million with a $20 million in salary. It's going to be tough to draft a quarterback next year. You're going to have to wait until 2023, and then he's done.
There's your problem right there. You mentioned it. It's not anything else but the salary cap. There's no way to make room for any players other than Matt Ryan in this scenario. That's why, unfortunately, you need to find a trade and move on from Matt Ryan. Atlanta's probably going to have to eat that whole entire salary because no one's going to take Matt Ryan with the way he's playing football right now. It just doesn't look good on tape. Whether you like it or not, again, he doesn't move the pocket and he doesn't get the ball out of his hands fast. There's not a lot of teams that are going to want that on their roster unless you have an offensive line that can give them that time to get rid of it. Again, Matt Ryan, great quarterback when he has an offensive line. I agree with you, Todd. I think if you put him down there in Tampa Bay, I think you get similar results. But this salary cap situation is the issue.
It's an albatross. Think about it. It just is, JJ. And, you know, Lyon's situation was somewhat similar with Stafford, but he was younger. They were able to get rid of him and get a quarterback in return. Where Atlanta, you got rid of Jones' salary. Now you have Ryan's salary. You're going to have to build the team as best as you can with him for the next 2 years. Maybe you can get good, because in the NFL you can get good quick. So I don't think all is gloom and doom. But you're going to have to give this new coaching staff a couple of drafts and see what they can do.
Yeah, you're exactly right about that. It's going to take a couple draft classes, Atlanta. You got to understand that we're young from inside out. Our best players are skilled positions in. You got Pitts, you got Ridley, you got Ryan, and we've already mentioned the woes of our offensive and defensive lines. But the defensive line is looking positive. They got a strip sack on Brady, which really got Atlanta back in the ball game. And they were competitive at times. So I like what Arthur Smith is preaching. He's not licking his wounds or looking for a pity from anybody. He's just saying we got to get back to work. So I like Arthur Smith's mentality. My final thought on the Atlanta Falcons is, look, you got a winnable game in New York this weekend. Let's see if you can right the ship with the win. You're within one game of 500 just like that.
You know what, JJ? You look at the the next six games on the schedule. Thank you. And you know what? Nick Wright has the Falcons going 5-3 after 8 games. A lot of Thomas and Mott said he's not wrong, which means they got to win 5 out of 6. Is it realistic? I guess it is. But to win 5 out of 6 in this league with divisional games coming up between Carolina, your biggest rival, New Orleans, which Jameis is going to show up. You play each New York team. I mean, my goodness, nothing is guaranteed in this league. And the Falcons are just going to have to take it 1 week at a time and see what they can do.
Yeah, you failed to mention the nastiest defensive line and arguably the NFL with Chase Young and their Washington football team. I almost called them something different, folks. The Washington football team is gonna be in the bins the 3rd of October, and that's gonna be, well, that could be the last game of Matt Ryan's career, if you ask me. I mean, that offensive line doesn't look like, no, I'm just kidding, folks. That's a joke. But I'm just saying that offensive line against Washington, I don't see it. I don't see how Nick Wright can say that and be so emphatic about it. Look, I think they can beat the Giants. I don't see them beating Washington and Chase Young. They can beat Zach Wilson and the Jets. Tua, if he's healthy, the 24th of October in Miami, that may be a winnable game. But I still like the Dolphins in that one. I like Darnold and the Panthers in the next one, and you go to New Orleans in the next one. So I don't see it with the way the Falcons are playing football right now.
It realistically, 3-3 would be good. 4-2 would be excellent, which would put you, 4-2 would put you at 500. So if you could get to 8 through 8 games at 500 with the 17-game season and the extra team making the playoffs, you're going to get some excitement. So we'll see if they can do that, guys. We're going to go ahead and play some more overreaction and reaction on Friday with a couple. I'm going to save a couple that you sent me, JJ. And we're just going to go ahead and go to the pick six. Show's a little longer than we thought, but you know what? I'm perfectly fine with it. I'm having a good time, and I hope you guys are too. Let's go to our last segment, NFL Quick Hits. You know what? Let's go ahead and we'll do college football first. I'll go last. You guys always give your picks. We'll let Wayne go first every time, then you, JJ. Number 12, Notre Dame versus Wisconsin. Wisconsin, they're 5.5-point favorite. Wayne, who do you got?
Wisconsin.
It's in Chicago, by the way.
Yeah, I'm picking Wisconsin, and I don't know why they're playing in Chicago. It's just weird.
Why, they're playing in Chicago? It's a neutral site. Are you kidding me? The stadium will be jam-packed, sellout. A ton of Notre Dame fans in Chicago. That's why they're playing there.
Well,
Yeah,
I like
it's going to be a
Wisconsin.
great atmosphere. I like the Badges. I think they're going to be more physical. From what I've seen from Notre Dame this year, I think Wisconsin should go in there and wipe them out. I like the Badgers big.
Wisconsin's not wiping out Notre Dame. Notre Dame plays everybody close. They'll play Wisconsin close too. Brian Kelly, trying to tie Newt Rodney's record or break it for all-time wins by a Fighting Irish head coach, despite not winning a national title, which is so much harder today than it was back then. Jack Cohen, the former Wisconsin quarterback who starts for Notre Dame. Hello, I'll take the Irish. And you know what? You're giving me the points. I'll take the Irish. Let's go to the next one. Number 7, Texas A&M 3-0. At number 20, Arkansas 3-0. Let's see. Jay, you took Wisconsin, so
Yep.
I know you did. Let's see. A&M, Arkansas 3-0. A&M a 5.5 point.
It's Texas, number 7 Texas
point
A&M.
favorite is A&M.
Yeah, number 7 Texas A&M 3-0 versus number 20 Arkansas. A&M's a 5.5 point favorite. If you're interested in the over/under, folks, it's 48. The game's going to be played at AT&T Stadium, aka Jerry World. Folks, I like the Hogs. I think Sam Pittman's got this team going in the right direction. I don't like the fact that Texas A&M's on their second-string quarterback, and that's my difference in the game. Sam Pittman coaches them up. Arkansas, woo pig. They cover.
I hope Arkansas doesn't invite you down there to do woo pig suey, because that was awful. Now, Wayne, who do you got and why?
I'm taking the Razorbacks. I think they're a chip on their shoulder, and they're still trying to prove themselves.
You see, you like Arkansas to beat A&M? You
Yes.
know, this is such a I tell you what, this is such a tough game to pick. Golly, I sat there and thought about it. Does Calzada play quarterback for A&M this week, or is it going to be King? Do you guys know that? JJ, do you know?
I'm pretty sure it's still going to be their backup. That's why I'm going with the Woo Pigs.
The Woo Pig. I tell you what, though. You know what? Each defense is pretty good. A&M and Jimbo Fisher, they've won more big games than Arkansas. The game is at Arkansas. But, I just like A&M running that football, and they seemed to get it right last week. And you know what, guys? You're giving me what? 5.5? Give me Texas A&M. I'm the opposite of you guys. And especially with the game being at Jerry World, there'll be a lot of A&M fans. There will be a lot of Arkansas fans in there. And Jerry Jones played football in Arkansas with Jimmy Johnson, but I'll take A&M. All right, let's go on to our final college game. University of Texas, San Antonio. We did this for you, Wayne. 3-0 versus Memphis. Memphis is 3-0. Memphis is a 3-point favorite. And obviously, Wayne, I'll let you go first. Over and under 65.
Well, I'm taking Memphis. I think that spread should be farther.
All right. I'm going to go with the Roadrunners. They beat Illinois on the road. Memphis beats Mississippi State at home. I like the UTSA win better. Sorry, Wayne. Give me the Roadrunners.
Beep, 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 beep. You know what? I'm going with Memphis here. I got to do it. They're at home. BB has a couple of good wins like JJ mentioned, but I'll go with Memphis. But dang, nabbit, I don't know if they'll cover. I say they will by 4. All right, let's go to the National Football League. We'll go with the Panthers and Sam Darnold, 2-0 at the Texans, 1-1. Wow, Carolina's gotten 7.5 points. The over and under is 43. Wayne, who in the world do you have here in your world?
I'm taking Panthers because they get the best defense so far.
I'll tell
Wayne.
you what. In Wayne's world, I like that pick. We'll see if I do it. Sorry, JJ. I apologize.
That's a flex. Wayne, we're on the same book. Here's the deal. Tyrod Taylor's out. There is no guy named Deshaun Watson on the active roster currently. Panthers, Sam Darnold, Matt Rule, Joe Brady, they win by 2 touchdowns in Houston. Sorry, Debbie the Texan.
Oh, it's just cold-blooded. She ain't even here to defend herself. You know, who is going to play quarterback for the Texans this week? I mean, golly. I know who it is. I'm sorry. It's rookie Mills.
Correct, David Mills.
What's that? I apologize. Go ahead, JJ.
David Mills.
No, Davis Mills.
Davis Mills.
Davis Mills will make his first career start on Thursday night against the Carolina Panthers. And you know what? There's no way I'm this stupid to not go with Carolina in that defense. And Sam Darnold, man, he's been revitalized since leaving that dump up there in New York for the Jets. So I'm going with the Panthers. Now, this is an interesting one, and it's the hardest game for me to pick. So I'm glad I'm going last. We got your Atlanta Falcons, Wayne's World, versus JJ's Falcons 2 against the New York Football Giants. Each team skidding at 0-2. And who's a 3-point favorite? Is that the Falcons?
Nope, that's
It
New
is.
York. No.
Oh, New York's 3-point favorite. I'm sorry, I couldn't tell on this. The over and under is 48.5. Wayne, sir, you go first.
I'm taking the Falcons. I always take the Falcons.
I'm going with the Falcons and the points. Something right's bound to happen, but I have a feeling Daniel Jones may just get me. But I'm taking the Falcons to cover. I think they got a better roster top to bottom.
JJ, you know, before I give my pick, you told me the Giants were playing better.
I did, but I said roster here.
But you told me they were playing better, so you
Correct.
know that
I said playing better. I've said the roster of the Falcons is better than the Giants.
Oh, I thought you told me the Giants were playing better. I apologize.
I did. I told you off air the
you
Giants
did?
were
Okay.
playing better, but I think
Okay.
the Falcons have a better roster, and that's what I said.
Okay. You know what? Golly, the Giants are a 3-point favorite. Man, each team needs a victory desperately. But I like Matt Ryan better than Danny Dimes, which I can't stand that nickname up there in New York. You know, he's palming it. What's that movie with Joe Pesci? What's that? They were in Alabama. What's the name of that movie, JJ? You know what I'm talking about?
My cousin Vinny.
My cousin Vinny. Yeah, he's palming it. Danny Dimes. Give me the Falcons. Falcons will get their first win of the season. Matt Ryan and company will squeak it out. All right, last game. I know we're going long on the show, guys. I'm sorry. Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Rams, each team undefeated. The line is even. So all we got to do here is pick a winner. Holy smokes, 54.5. Wayne, you first. It's your world.
I'm taking the Rams.
Why?
Pick every
because
single. Wayne and I are on the same
let him
team.
go. Why?
Because they got a better team overall. Buccaneers are dependent on one or two guys, and I just feel like Rams got a better overall team.
Man, I don't know. All right, JJ, go ahead.
I'm going with the Rams as well. Wayne and I are pretty much on the same wavelength except for the deep beat pick. I like the Rams. I like Stafford. I like Sony Michel. I like Henderson to be able to run the ball. I like Cooper Kupp outside. I like Robert Woods. I think the Rams D gets after Tom Brady. Aaron Donald's the best player in football. Don't forget it. Rams convincingly.
Convincingly. Well, that just makes me right there just go, nah. Give me the GOAT, the GOAT. You already said it this week. Gigantic game. Got to play well. Tom Brady usually plays extremely well in big games. I like Tampa Bay's offensive line. I just like they got the deep ball now with Brady's game. Their defense knows how to get after the quarterback. This is really going to be a fun one. But since we're JJ, you're 8-10 overall, 3-3 last week. I'm 7-11 overall, 3-3 last week. Wayne, you joined me in the river, 7-11 last place, 2-4 overall. We all stink. I'm completely different than you guys this week. So either I go deeper in the river or I'm in first place. So we'll find out. Guys, we got a show live on Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Blog Talk Radio, 1-347-205-9631, 1-347-205-9631. Join Mark Mancini and I. We'll hopefully have a guest for you. If not, we'll play a little bit of overreaction in college football and talk Braves baseball and etc. Till then, have a great week, everybody.
Gets one. NFL referees, stop throwing so many taunting flags. See you later, folks.